All right, what is up everybody? Sam here with Contour Aerials, and today I wanted to do a video about getting into FPV. So getting into FPV was a big time investment as far as understanding kind of what I was about to jump into and knowing that the controls were going to be a lot different than what I was used to, and that there was a whole kind of vocabulary and language around FPV that I needed to understand a little more before I could really feel confident about ordering a drone, building one out, and then giving it a go. So to start out, I bought the FRSKY Qx7 Taranis radio. I wanted to go with this radio just because of kind of the versatility that it would provide. And so being able to have a radio for essentially any situation where you might need to be able to bind up to an aircraft through FRSKY and be able to fly it, I figured why not? I'd rather have kind of the versatility of having this radio than diving into a full ecosystem like the DJI controller. Also the price point. This radio was $113 off race day quads, I believe. The DJI radio is $300. So this was a price savings as well as kind of a versatile option for me. Where I did decide to go into the DJI digital realm for my VTX, for my FPV system, you could say. Again, I'm still learning a lot of the vocab in FPV, so not 100% versed or well versed in all the terms and slang. But either way, DJI Goggles, picked these up off DJI.com for $490. I will say the one upgrade you should do right away is get a different strap. The stock DJI strap, it's not great, and as much as you think you can make it work, it's just so much nicer to have a strap that actually fits securely onto your head. Another thing I picked up from Joshua Bardwell, if you don't know who he is, you should check out some of his YouTube videos. Actually, every YouTube video he puts out, you will learn something. Anyway, put a little zip tie around your cord here. That'll keep your cable secured and it won't fall out on you. So pro tip there from Joshua Bardwell himself. Anyway, DJI goggles, and then I went straight into a 5-inch build. I know some people would suggest maybe doing a tiny whoop or just kind of starting small, kind of crawl before you can walk and run, but I figured with my experience flying a lot of different platforms, I could handle it. And at first, I think I was a little terrified and thought I had maybe made the wrong decision, but once you get over that learning curve and you kind of calm your nerves a little bit and settle into it, I believe you can fly these as a beginner, but it also depends on what your background is and your experience. Obviously, if you've never flown a drone before, I don't recommend buying one of these and trying to do it. And if you're gonna buy an FPV setup and get into it, you should start out with a simulator. The simulator I started out with was Velocidrone, and that the physics of Velocidrone seem to be a lot more real life than some of the other simulators out there. Velocidrone's $20, download it to your computer, Mac or PC. You can plug in a PlayStation 3 controller. That's what I did originally, just to get the feel of it. And then once this QX7 showed up, I was able to plug USB into this radio and then fly in the simulator that way, which was super helpful to get the feel of that radio. So highly recommend buying your radio first, plugging into your simulator, and getting the feel that way before you even try and fly anything. So yeah, so onto the 5-inch here. This is a RotorRiot HD1. You can get these pre-built and tuned. Basically, they come ready to go for you, but I really wanted to get all the pieces and basically build it out myself. I feel like you learn a whole heck of a lot more. You just have to be ready for some headaches. But anyway, when I was looking for this kit, all the DIY kits were already sold out. And so what I did is I just went and looked at all the specs and pretty much pieced everything I could. Like the motors were a little different than what they suggested. These were the Hype Train Freestyle V2s, 2450 kVs. I think the Ladrib motors they recommend are 2650 kVs, so pretty similar, close enough for me. But so I bought those off RotorRiot, the frame obviously off RotorRiot. I think the motors, all four, were like 103 altogether. The frame was about 45. And the beautiful thing about this frame is it comes with these 3D TPU mounts for the air unit, the DJI digital FPV system. So then the air unit was about, with actually the flight controller and ESC. Flight controller is this kind of chip looking deal up top here. ESC, electronic speed controller, which is what you solder your motor wires to. This is a kind of a 2-in-1 setup here. It's the Newbie Drone Infinity 30 amp, I believe. But anyway, it's built specifically to go with the air unit made by DJI, where the air unit just plugs right into it. So there's not much soldering you have to do for the air unit to the stack connection. This was all just the ESC and then my receiver. So since I started out with the Qx7 and the FRSKY ecosystem, I think the internal receiver or transmitter mode is XJT D8 or D16. I think it's both actually. But so I started out with a RXSR receiver that I was able to purchase off RotorRiot 2. That's an option they have in their pre-built kits, so they have those to choose from. Started out with that, soldered it in, really small soldering spots. So you definitely want to get comfortable soldering first. Once you get your components, there's not a lot of instructions. And so again, YouTube, all sorts of good people out there that show. Fortunately, Joshua Bardwell has a basically like 3 video series, maybe even 4 video series about how to build this exact drone. Granted, his steps are a little different, but for the most part, he's going to show you everything you need to know and how to do it. Once you get everything put together, then you plug your flight controller into Betaflight. That's what I use for a flight controller program software. And then that's where like the real headaches can kind of start. So again, Joshua Bardwell has tons of videos on different issues in Betaflight and what a lot of those settings mean, and essentially how to get your quad set up, how to get everything, all your modes set up in your radio, all your arming switches, just to do everything. He's got all that stuff. That's who I recommend. But again, basically this whole kit, $250 for the air unit and the flight controller and ESC. Motors, all four, I think were 100. Frame was like 45. GoPro 8 mount at 20 degrees. This was $15. Up top here, I have a GPS unit I got off race day, $16. TPU mount for your DJI antennas comes with the frame. Race day quad sends you these awesome straps. Ethics props, I think I got a 10 pack of 4 props per pack. I didn't quite understand that. I was like, oh yeah, sure, I need 10 total, but I got 10 4-packs, so that's pretty sweet. I have props forever. Overall, on the only other thing I did to the Taranis was I updated the regular gimbals. I went to the Hall sensor gimbals, and I'm pretty sure the Hall sensor gimbals are a magnetic gimbal compared to whatever the regular gimbals were, maybe spring. Super good sticks. The upgrade is worth it. They're $26 a piece, so $50 more, you have a pretty solid radio setup. The one big thing that I did, and this kind of goes back to not getting the DJI controller, was the idea of Crossfire was kind of on my mind in the beginning, even though I really had no idea what Crossfire was. I just heard of the range potential. And so I ended up basically upgrading to Crossfire. That's what this antenna is here. This is the Immortal T antenna. Everybody recommends it. Some people talk about mounting it vertically. Just kind of depends like how your build looks and what you have for looks like and what you have for like the best kind of orientation. Crossfire Nano receiver right there. Pretty small receiver, so some pretty tight soldering moves, but not too bad overall. And then you might have noticed on the transmitter here, the radio, I have the Crossfire Micro TX essentially transmitter plugged into the Qx7. So on the Qx7, you will get a little chip that you have to open up the radio and solder this chip in and break a piece off of the board inside of here. So essentially your baud rate can be what Crossfire needs it to be. So the responsiveness on the sticks is like instantaneous. There's no lag. I think they say it's like 3 to 4 milliseconds, where if you don't, it's gonna, if you have the QX7 access, you don't need to do that. But that baud rate still, I think, only stays at like 16 milliseconds, which millisecond isn't very much, but when you're dealing with 3 to 4 single-digit millisecond like lag time, it's amazing how responsive it is. And so that alone is something that I think it doesn't get talked about as much. Everyone talks about range, and sure, range is awesome, but that responsiveness at a decent range is wild. So I highly recommend it. The one thing I will say with this setup, the first Nano receiver they sent me, for whatever reason, it started to it unbound on me twice in the first month. I don't know what it is. It seems like some of those boards got mass produced super quick and they're not very durable. So I've seen a lot of people have had issues with little capacitors and components breaking off, but they seem to be pretty good. If you contact their support, they'll open up a ticket and they'll help you out from there. So this is the second Nano that I've actually installed, which not a big deal. It's only like 4 solder points, and basically you can leave everything connected to your flight controller. You just desolder your other one and swap the new one in, you're good to go. Other than that, got my ammo can here full of my batteries. This is a 4S build. I didn't know enough about 6S yet to even think that that was a smart move, and I just figured why not. Like, I didn't want to have to piece together maybe a different flight controller, an ESC stack, to be able to handle 6S power. Again, I'm not sure if this stack actually will handle it natively, but it was one of those things, like, I didn't know enough about it at the time, so I just didn't even bother with it. So it's a 4S setup. This is actually a 4S battery. This is for this little 3-inch guy over here. But yeah, I think I've bought 3 race day quad, 1500 milliamp, 4S, 100C, maybe 130C. I think 3 of those was like $70. And then I got 3 Gaoneng 1500 milliamps. I think those were like roughly $70 too. And then for chargers, I got the ISDT 608 AC charger. It's actually super slick. I picked up a parallel board with it, as well as a AC DC power supply. So it takes the AC from your house, can output more amperage and charge more batteries at a higher amperage at once. And so you go from like charging one 1500 milliamp 4S battery in 30-45 minutes to charging 3 to 4 in 45 minutes. So that's pretty slick. Keeps you going, keeps you flying. Keep my batteries in my ammo can when I'm not using them for the most part. I just charge in this tin bucket thing over here. Not going to talk about charging batteries because that's a whole nother can of worms, but there's tons of videos out there. Do your research on charging batteries and be smart about it before you actually think you know what's going on. This is a whole different ball game from any sort of other regular drone batteries out there as far as charging goes. So definitely be cautious about that and know what you're doing before you start. All right, guys, I hope that helps. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything, if you feel like you now understand what you need to buy for getting into FPV, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment. Let me know how your build goes. Let me know what you decide to do. Yeah, throw it out there as far as what you're thinking. And if I got anything wrong, please let me know in the comments. It's always fun to try and spitball off the top of the head with just a little bit of rehearsal and see what you end up saying. But anyway, thanks again, guys.